Hi everybody, and welcome to another video of my series of history of old First Division teams. In this video, this is going to be the history of Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur have got a tradition of playing football how it should be. The tradition stretches all the way back to the 1950s. Let's start now this video in the start of the 1960s, when Tottenham were the first British team to do the double. They won the old First Division in the 60-61 season. And the following season, in 1961-62, they won the FA Cup. And then they won it again in 1962, the FA Cup. That was when Tottenham's dominance started. They really had some great players then. And the manager was Billy Nicholson. And they had Danny Blanchflower playing for them then. They can tell how long ago that was. And they won the 1965 Old European Cup Winners' Cup, beating Real Madrid. Like I've said, that's when Tottenham had great players then in the 60s. And they won the cup again in 1967 when they beat Chelsea 2-1. That was when Tottenham had Jimmy Greaves playing for them. What a player he was. You talk about Georgie Best being a great footballer, but Jimmy Greaves, he was brilliant. He was a brilliant footballer. He scored many goals for Spurs. And after that, Tottenham went into decline at the start of the 1970s. Tottenham were another team that should have won more trophies then in the 70s, which they did. They won the League Cup in 1971 when they beat Villa. And then they won it again in 1973 when they beat Norwich City. Tottenham should have had, like I've said, Tottenham should have won a lot more silverware trophies then, but they didn't. They won the old UEFA Cup in the 71-72 season when they played Wolves in the final. And then after that, that's when their decline started. At the start of the 74-75 season, Bill Nicholson resigned, and that's when Keith Birkinshaw took over. Tottenham then were relegated from the old First Division in the 76-77 season. Although they spent only one season in the old Second Division, the 77-78 season, they came right back up again. But like I've said, Tottenham should have won more trophies in that decade in the 70s. They did, but really they should have won the old First Division trophy, the league. They should have won that again. They had the players. They had the players there who could have won things for them. I mean, they had Jimmy Greaves. He left to join West Ham, and Martin Peters. He joined. He left West Ham to go to Tottenham. And they had Martin Chivers, who was another centre forward, who was he was a proper old-fashioned centre forward. And they had Steve Perriman. They had, they had quality players there at the time who could have won them more trophies, like the old First Division, but they didn't. It was more of a team that won the odd cup here and there. But like I've said, their decline, Tottenham's decline started in the late 70s, the 74-75 season. That's when their decline uh, started. They didn't win any more cups until 1981 when they won the FA Cup. And then, of course, they won it again in 82. And they won the old UEFA Cup in 1984. Tottenham were a top team, really. They were. They never really reached the heights they should have done by winning the old First Division. The old First Division. They should have won that more often, but they didn't. Like I've said, they had the players, but they never seemed to achieve it. They always seemed to win a cup. But of course, now the golden era for them have gone. And of course, tomorrow is a is D-Day for them. If they lose tomorrow, they will be relegated to the Championship. Let's think. If Tottenham don't win tomorrow, they lose to Everton. They will, and West Ham win. Tottenham will find themselves in the Championship. That's going to be unheard of. A team like Tottenham playing in the Championship. But like I've said, the players they had there, they should have won more trophies, but they didn't. I mean, when Leicester won the Premier League in 2015-16 season, Tottenham finished second, and everybody was saying, "Oh, Tottenham are going to win it." They never did. Like they've had used to have great players. Tottenham did like Jimmy Greaves, who could find the back ball in the back of the net with his eyes closed. He used to score some memorable goals. And of course, they had Martin Chivers there. He was and like I've said, an underrated old-fashioned centre forward who could score goals. Tottenham bought him from Bill Nickerson bought him from Southampton. I think in 1967 he bought him. At that time, Tottenham had, like I've said, great players. They had Greaves, Givers, Alan Gilzine, Mike England. He was a centre force, centre centre half, and they had Alan Mullery as well, and Steve Perriman. Oh, they had such a great players back then in the late 60s, going into the 70s, and towards the end of the 70s, it all started to go wrong for them. And of course, the great players they had there, like I've just mentioned, they went up to retirement and they had to replace them. And of course, we know what Keith Birkinshaw did when he was manager of Spurs. He bought in Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa, didn't he, in 1978? After the 78 World Cup, Argentina won that. Tottenham then were starting to Glenn Hoddle Tottenham then in the late 80s and the late 70s, going into the 80s, that's when they started to have a team. They had some good players, like I've said, two Argentinian players, again, Glenn Hoddle. Was just starting to get a team together that could have maybe have challenged for the old First Division title. Well, anyway, that's the end of this video, another history of an old First Division team, and I'll see you all again in another one.